Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a bit of book drama for today that will put my almost complete review of Skyshade on hold for a few days. An opinion piece from the New York Times by David J. Morris. The disappearance of literary men should worry everyone. Wow, I'm sure this will be a piece about the literary works of great men who have helped shape modern literature, and an appreciation of what they've done for their respective genres and the art of storytelling as a whole. I'm just kidding. We all know what this is going to be. Let's start the usual song and dance and start reading the article from the top. Over the past 2 decades, literary fiction has become a largely female pursuit. Novels are increasingly written by women and read by women. In 2004, about half of the authors on the New York Times fiction bestseller list were women, and about half men. This year, the list looks to be more than 3/4 women. According to multiple reports, women readers now account for 80% of fiction sales. Yeah, it's really hard to compete with those churned-out romance books that wear the skin of other genres. I'm honestly impressed with how fast they're put out. Well, impressed may be a strong word. Fascinated is a bit better, but it's still not quite right. Bemused works, let's go with that. Yes, most books are written by women these days. Most publishing companies have made it pretty clear who they want to publish, and unless you check the right boxes, it isn't men. That's not to say men don't get published. If you're already big, have a massive following, and the suits at the publishing houses remember they have a mortgage due next month, they'll happily publish your work. Otherwise, it's back to the indies with you. Or, for most guys, off to your video games and other activities. But on with the article. I see the same pattern in the creative writing program where I've taught for 8 years. About 60% of our applications come from women, and some cohorts in our program are entirely female. When I was a graduate student in a similar program about 20 years ago, the cohorts were split fairly evenly by gender. As Eamon Dolan, a vice president and executive editor at Simon & Schuster, told me recently, the young male novelist is a rare species. Male underrepresentation is an uncomfortable topic in a literary world otherwise highly attuned to such imbalances. In 2022, the novelist Joyce Carol Oates wrote on Twitter that a friend who is a literary agent told me that he cannot even get editors to read first novels by young white male writers, no matter how good. The public response to Miss Oates' comment was swift and cutting, not entirely without reason, as the book world does remain overwhelmingly white, but the lack of concern about the fate of male writers was striking. So this guy asks and answers his question early in the article. Yes, if the editors at publishing houses won't even look at submissions from one demographic, it's no surprise you're going to see less of them in that profession. It also makes me feel really good about all those query letters I apparently wasted my time on years ago. As for seeing more women than men in creative writing programs at college, that one is easy. More women are going to college than men. According to Forbes, women comprised 58% of all college students in the year 2020. It's probably more now. It would make sense that the creative writing classes are about 60% women, and if you take into account the different subjects that men move towards, the classes where it's 100% women also make sense. College has become both prohibitively expensive and almost worthless unless you're trying to be a doctor or an engineer. Many people in the new generation are looking to the trades because college has become such a bad deal, and being stuck with unbankruptable loans for the rest of your life really isn't that appealing. I'm not going to say there aren't creative writing courses at trade schools and community colleges. I haven't checked them all. But if you're there for an HVAC certificate or to become a pharmacy aide, you probably just want to get your classes over with so you can move on with your life. Making a living at any job is hard. Making it as a writer is doubly so, regardless of your education. I did notice where the author of this piece tried to pat himself on the back with that "attuned to such imbalances" line. I think they would be very attuned to it since it seems to be their stated goal. He just told us they're refusing submissions from a group based on their inalterable characteristics. When you do this, you can't then act surprised at the results when that's the very thing you were shooting for and breaking the law to make happen. Moving on. To be clear, I welcome the end of male dominance in literature. Men ruled the roost for far too long, too often at the expense of great women writers who ought to have been read instead. I also don't think that men deserve to be better represented in literary fiction. They don't suffer from the same kind of prejudice that women have long endured. Furthermore, young men should be reading Sally Rooney and Elena Ferrand. Male readers don't need to be paired with male writers. But if you care about the health of our society, especially in the age of Donald Trump and distorted conceptions of masculinity he helps to foster, the decline and fall of literary men should worry you. This guy sounds like the type of person with an open marriage. It's only by luck I captured those two paragraphs together. I love the nice contrast they make. First of all, he asserts in this article that there are editors who don't even look at first works submitted by young male novelists. Isn't that exactly the same type of prejudice he was referring to that women were going through? I could be wrong, but I don't remember stories of editors tracking down female applicants to set fire to their manuscripts in front of them and to laugh as the girls' dreams literally go up in smoke. I also remember a modern female author, or writer, I can't remember which, being upset that she was constantly overshadowed and outsold by Tolkien. Writing, as with most creative pursuits, is attached to a fiercely competitive market. Regardless of your gender, it's hard for anyone to make a breakthrough. The author of this piece is defending the exclusion of men from literary circles at the same time he's bemoaning it. You're never going to convince most men to read something they're not interested in. I've not heard of Sally Rooney or Elena Ferrand. Someone is screeching at my pronunciation of that last name, I just know it. I'm going to assume based on reading ahead that the books these two write probably disparage men and blame them for all the ills of the world. Or maybe I'm just too jaded from modern times, and from hearing such things chanted from the rooftops by people who hate men. Either way, if men actually enjoyed the literature he's recommended, they probably would be reading it already. Men who read love to talk to others who read about the books they enjoyed. It's something we have in common with women who read. So why shouldn't male readers be paired with male writers? Having read several books by women, I can tell many of the popular ones can't write a good male character to save their lives. Far too often, male characters are doormats. Their sole purpose seems to be to make the main female character feel special and to be dangerous to everyone except the main female character. Unless he's the villain, then he's cartoonishly evil for stupid reasons, and probably into everything that's considered bad and everything that is popular to accuse people of on the internet. He probably also kicks puppies, just to drive home the not-so-subtle message. Oh, and we've arrived at Trump. I don't think I've ever made my thoughts on him clear on this channel. Well, keep holding your breath because I'm still not going to. I find it amazing how this one man has broken the brains of so many people. And I mean really broke their brains. Like, his very existence is a personal insult to them, and just by being orange reminds them every day of their failings and insecurities. As a rule, I hate politicians and functionaries, so anyone who makes such lower life forms apoplectic with rage can't be all bad. Moving on. In recent decades, young men have regressed educationally, emotionally, and culturally. Among women matriculating at four-year public colleges, about half will graduate 4 years later. For men, the rate is under 40%. This disparity surely translates to a drop-off in the numbers of novels young men read, as they descend deeper into video games and porn. Young men who still exhibit curiosity about the world too often seek intellectual stimulation through figures of the manosphere such as Andrew Tate and Joe Rogan. I feel attacked. Probably because I own so many games. In my case, they're usually a way to pass moments of free time. Then I chop up my sessions and use them as backgrounds for my videos. As for the other thing, this is an almost family-friendly channel, and there are some things we don't discuss. As for more women graduating college, we've covered this. College is really expensive and almost worthless. Leaving out the general market saturation for jobs requiring 4-year degrees, there's little point in getting a job that makes more money if your student loan payment is going to take all the money you would have made on top of the job you would have gotten if you didn't go to college in the first place. Also, a lot of jobs outside the obvious that require a 4-year degree aren't really paying the bills anymore. There are certificates you can pick up at your local community college that will have a much better return on investment and probably end up with you making more money than your participation degree buddies. As for Tate and Rogan, I don't like Tate. I'm pretty sure no guy I know likes Tate. But he's a convenient scapegoat for people who don't want to look too hard for a boogeyman. I don't know much about him other than the weird takes that occasionally plop onto my Twitter timeline. Most of them feel like a high schooler wrote them. As for Rogan, it's not hard to see why men like him. He's into fighting, he likes fitness, he's a really good interviewer, and he's achieved the kind of success that most people can only dream of. I'm not sure why there's so much hate sent his way. It's probably because he has the #1 podcast in the world, and the internet is filled with contrarians. I think I've watched 2 of his podcasts in my life. He's just a guy talking with people and trying to figure them out. Moving on. The marginalization of young men seems to have been a significant factor in this year's presidential election. No voters were more committed to Mr. Trump than young white men, and he also did well with Hispanic men and continued to make gains with black men. I think of 2024 as the Fight Club election, in which disaffected guys vented their frustration and anxieties through a brawler who will one day reveal himself to be not their hero, but rather a figment of their imagination. Don't be surprised when you demonize and abuse a group only to find they don't like you, or anything to do with you. Young men are not pawns to be used for your political gain. The author of this piece has already told us how young men are being shut out of the literary industry because of prejudice that he supports. He doesn't then get to turn around and be surprised that they didn't vote for his guy. As for the last election, the answer is simple. The price of living went way too high, way too fast. The people in power were bad at their jobs and got fired. I'm constantly hearing politicos whining, "They made a dumb decision. I can't believe they're mad they can't afford food or start families. Don't they know my candidate was the best choice?" It's probably the most arrogant thing I've ever heard to expect other people to suffer through starvation and loneliness just so you can feel good about what lawyer is in office. The author's side gained power and did a terrible job. People like to eat and enjoy life. If this author's side can't make conditions for that possible, they don't deserve to be in office. This is also why men are leaving his side. People in general don't like to be constantly told they're the root of all evil. Men being people tend not to support other people who openly and vocally hate them. This isn't hard stuff. If you want people to like you, you might want to first start by not actively holding them back and excluding them from advancement. It's a wild thought, I know. Moving on. These young men need better stories. They need to see themselves as belonging to the world of storytelling. Novels do many things. They entertain, inspire, puzzle, hypnotize. But reading fiction is also an excellent way to improve one's emotional IQ. Novels help us form our identities and understand our lives. Like many other bookish Gen Xers, I can't conceive of my formative years without the Douglas Copeland novel that gave our generation its name. This is why we need a more inclusive literary culture, one that will bring young men in from the cold. Belonging to the world of storytelling. He told us earlier in this piece how industry insiders are actively excluding young men, and how he supports it. You can't expect people to feel included when you exclude them purely on how they were born. He also shouldn't be surprised that this exclusion and refusal to give them a fair shake is driving them away, not just from the industry, but his ideals. People like to belong and usually go where they feel welcome. Emotional IQ. I hate this phrase. Just thought I would share that. I've also grown to hate the word inclusive. I've chucked it in the pile with tolerance, green, and about 1,000 other words that have been co-opted by activists trying to control people's behavior and speech. We all need better stories. I should know. I've read a lot of the modern claptrap the publishing companies are pushing out. Mostly, it's barely readable romantasy books. Don't get me wrong, there are some good to passable books coming out of the big publishing houses. But I've also seen some real garbage plop its way onto the bookshelves because some popular TikToker managed to pile together 100,000 words into a semi-coherent pile. Reading is a personal thing, and what's being presented today often does not appeal to young men. Having sat through books I found insufferable, I can tell you it's more enjoyable to dig up your yard with a spoon than sit through a book you hate, or that's preachy, or that insults you for your shade and dangly bits. Moving on. I'm not saying that we should declare the progress for women writers complete and now focus only on men. The question for me is, what will become of literature, and indeed of society, if men are no longer involved in reading and writing? The fortunes of men and women are intertwined. This is why, for example, I make sure that my male students read The Handmaid's Tale. It's not just their edification that matters. Women also benefit from the existence of better men. Ah, The Handmaid's Tale. I group this with books like Harry Potter, in the sense that some people need to expand their horizons and put these books down. Don't get me wrong, I've read Harry Potter. It's not a bad series. It's like many books. A small group of weirdos with other problems ruined it. That and the doom camping. I get the feeling at some point I'm going to have to read the fetish material known as The Handmaid's Tale. I really don't want to. If I wanted propaganda, I'd turn on the TV. If you want to get men interested in reading again, maybe tempt them with something they'd want to read, rather than what you want them to read. There are good books out there. I know. I've read them. This also isn't a societal issue because your favorite form of media isn't doing well among a certain demographic, especially if that demographic is one you've gone out of your way to insult and exclude. Once again, we're faced with the age-old dilemma of people not wanting to be around other people who hate them. I've got a book recommendation for Mr. Morris. How to Make Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It goes a long way to explaining some basic human motivations and why people don't like being preached at by people who openly hate them. Come to think of it, I haven't made a video about how to make friends and influence people. Maybe one week soon. Alright, we're almost done. Here I am reminded of something that the feminist scholar Bell Hooks once wrote. There remains a small strain of feminist thinkers who feel strongly that they have given all they want to give to men. They are concerned solely with improving the collective welfare of women. Yet life has shown me that at any time a single male dares to transgress patriarchal boundaries, something I am convinced that literature enables men to do, the lives of women, men, and children are fundamentally changed for the better. Bell Hooks needs to be capitalized if it's a name. I've also never read her, and I don't intend to. I'm tired of this idea that it's only books that can change a person's life for the better. That books are somehow some profound media, wholly unto itself. We're telling stories, something that's done in almost every other media. Modern literature feels more like it's riding the coattails of greater talents that came before. As authors, we're not just competing with other authors. People today have massive competition for their attention. I can also say I've played games with much, much better stories than the sludge cluttering up most bookstore shelves. I also hate it when politicos try to hide behind making a better society. Let men like what they want. If you want men to get into books again, you're going to have to stop barring the door anytime they try to come into the club. People go where they're wanted. Alright, I'm tired and my throat hurts. Good luck, everyone.